Okay, class, I'm not going to go through and do every single one, but I am going to try and get to a good chunk of these so you sort of have some problems worked out other than just looking at the answer key here. So let me see if I can get some better lighting going on. Okay, so if we look at number 1, right, we're simplifying. So to simplify, we're going to prime factor. So we'll start prime factoring 50. I'm going to split it into 2 and 25. 25 then splits into 5 and 5, right? So 2 times 5 times 5. Sorry. We have a pair of 5s. Pairs go out in front. The leftover 2 stays inside, but we have to remember that there was already a 2 out here in front. So anything in the same location gets multiplied together. So 2 times 5 gives us 10, so we'll have 10 square root 2, which is B. Number 3, we have multiplication. When we multiply even if they don't match, it doesn't matter. So 8 times 3 gives us 24. X squared times x gives us x to the 3rd. Y times y squared gives us y to the 3rd. Okay, then once we're there, we're going to start prime factoring and simplifying. So if we prime factor here, 24 is going to prime factor into 2 and 12, 2 and 6, 2 and 3, so 2 times 2 times 2 times 3. Then we need 3 x's for x to the 3rd and 3 y's for y to the 3rd. So we have a pair of 2, x, and y. So we'll have a 2xy out in front and a square root 6xy inside. So that will be C. Number 4, when we add the coefficients in front and we keep the square root the same. So 2 plus 7 gives us a 9. The 3 stays the same, so 9 square root 3, which is B. 5, you'll just need to simplify that 112 and then do the same thing we did on 4. Okay, number 6 through 9, it's asking you to solve by any option, so you can use whatever you want. So number 6, I'm going to do by completing the square. That doesn't have to be the method that you would choose. This is in the correct format, so -4 is B, half of that is -2, squared is +4, so I'm going to add 4 to each side. So it'll be x minus 2 squared equals 9. The square root of 9 is 3, plus or minus 3, right? I'll add 2 to each side, so we have 2 options, a +3 plus 2 and a -3 plus 2. So 5 and -1, which is B. Okay, number 9, we have a coefficient in front that isn't 1, so most likely we would be choosing the quadratic formula. So A is 3, B is -19, C is 40. So the negative of -19 is 19, plus or minus -19 squared, minus 4 times 3 times 40. All over 2 times 3. So we'll do what's underneath the square root. Okay, and we'll get 19 plus or minus the square root of -119. And we don't even need to go any further because there's a negative underneath the square root. So that will be a no real solution, which is C. Right, we don't have an answer there. Number 11, I'm going to solve by taking a square root. So if we're going to solve by taking a square root, I'll add 50 to each side. So that says 2x squared equals 50. Then we can divide by 2. It says x squared equals 25. I'll square root each side, so x equals plus or minus 5. So that means 2 answers, right? A +5 and a -5, which is A. Number 12 is not set up to find A, B, and C yet because it's not set equal to 0, so we would need to subtract 10 from each side to make that happen. So A is 2, B is -19, C is -10, and so our answer should be B. 13, when we're looking at the graphs, A has 2 solutions because it crosses twice. B has 2 solutions because it crosses the x-axis twice. D has 1 solution because it touches. C is our no solution because it never crosses. Okay, number 14 is set equal to 0, so I'm going to use the quadratic formula. The quadratic formula will be given to you on the test. So the negative of -6 is +6, plus or minus squared minus 4 times 1 times 8, all over 2 times 1. So we'll do underneath this square root. We'll get 4. The square root of 4 is 2. So we'll have 6 plus 2 over 2 and 6 minus 2 over 2. So 6 plus 2 is 8. 8 divided by 2 is 4. 6 minus 2 is 4. 4 divided by 2 is 2. Number 2, I'm going to do by factoring out a GCF just because I'm going through and doing some different options here. So I'm going to factor out a GCF of 2x. So we'll have 2x times x minus 2. So 2x equals 0 and x minus 2 equals 0. Solve both of those. So we'll get 0 and 2. Okay, so we flip the page. Let's take a look at number 19. Okay, so 19, we have A is 16, B is 0, C is negative 9, if that's the route you're going to go. So we'd say negative 0 plus or minus 0 squared. So underneath the square root, we'll have 576. So the square root of 576 gives us 24. So I have negative 0 plus or minus 24 all over 32, right? That 0 doesn't matter. So we need to reduce that 24 over 32, which is 3/4. So we'll have plus or minus 3/4. You could write that as positive 3/4 and negative 3/4. That would be fine. Let's look at number 23. 23, if we do the quadratic formula here, A is 1, B is negative 6, C is 4. So the negative of negative 6 is 6, plus or minus negative 6 squared minus 4 times 1 times 4, all over 2 times 1. So underneath the square root, we'll get 20. Okay, if we try and take the square root of 20, that is not a perfect square. So we'll need to simplify it. So we'll start prime factoring. Okay, so we'll get a pair of 2's. So it'll be 6 plus or minus 2 square root 5 all over 2. And then we need to make sure we reduce here. So 6, 2, and 2 are all divisible by 2. So 6 divided by 2 is 3, plus or minus 1 square root 5 over 1. You wouldn't need that over 1, and you wouldn't need that 1 in front of the 5. Okay, on the back page, number 24, it doesn't really matter what option you pick. It matters that you pick good reasoning with it. Okay, so you can't say I'm going to solve by taking a square root because that's what I like. Okay, you can't say I'm going to solve by taking the quadratic formula because that's what I like, right? You would need to say I'm solving with the quadratic formula because it always works. It's set equal to 0, and I cannot use, right, because and why not the other ones? I'm not using taking a square root because it has an x to the first power. Number 25, if we look at our comparison phrase here, the length of a rectangle is 2 more than 4 times the width. Okay, so we'll say our width equals W. Our length is 2 more than, which means to add 4 times the width. So when we write our formula, we'll say 4W plus 2 times W equals 289. That's what we would need to distribute and start solving. 26 is just a regular equation. No exponents of 2, so we can just solve by combining our like terms. Our variables are on opposite sides, so we have to use the opposite sign. So 6x equals 20, divided by 6, x equals 10/3.